But for some lumber yards that buy and sell salvaged or reclaimed wood, recycling is not a byproduct. It's the central activity. In a sleepy little corner of Maine, Longleaf lumber specializes in wood that's typically at least 100 years old. Or in the case of antique heart pine, is virtually extinct because of overharvesting.
Our antique heart pine, which is the soul of our business, comes from mill buildings that were built during the Industrial Revolution. They were built with heart pine sawn in the south and shipped up to the north. We also get a lot of material from barns and houses.
The reclaimed wood business began in the 1960s, with roots in the anti-establishment and environmental movements. Supporters took pride in the fact that they weren't cutting down trees to build or renovate their houses.
And as those hippies have grown older and become retiring CEOs of corporations with 5,000 square foot mansions, they've bought into this whole market of recycled lumber. It ties them back to the earth and to something that's very personal.
While the market for reclaimed wood has certainly grown, it's less than 1% of the total lumber industry. Still, that's big business. About 60 companies nationwide are in the reclaimed lumber trade, recycling around 250 million board feet annually. These lumber yards typically mill and resell lumber at about 4 times its original cost. Prices of $16 to $20 a board foot are not unusual. In Longleaf's lumberyard, a recent shipment of heavily distressed wood is risen from history and now awaits millwork.
These are white oak pilings that came out of Boston Harbor, Battery Wharf in Boston Harbor. We believe that they're about 100 years old, but we're not certain. Some of them are very distressed, as you can see. Others are very solid, but we'll saw these up and make flooring out of these. A lot of them have a lot of very, very deep color, especially staining from iron that's been in these things for many years. It's reacted with the salt water, and a black-blue kind of stain shoots through the grain and colors it in a very unusual way, and some people really, really like it.
But typically, the reclaimed wood comes from buildings.
Our material comes in beam form off a demolition site or a dismantling site, and as you can see behind you, it's stacked up in an orderly fashion so that we can determine what we can yield out of the material. We pull all the metal out of it. We're using airport wand type metal detectors, personal type metal detectors. And then we saw the material into boards with a band mill. And we dry the material. Even though it's quite old and relatively dry, it still isn't necessarily dry enough for millwork, which is what we do.
Reclaimed wood is dried in a kiln that has high-speed blowers, sending in heated air for 3 to 4 days.
And then we run it through a 4-side molder, at which point it is a finished product.
Longleaf's lumberyard and mill are in Maine, but its showroom is here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where the demand for reclaimed wood is great.
We wanted customers to be able to come in and walk on the different floors that we have available. When you see a larger expanse of these installed floors, they get a real sense of what they can have in their homes. People aesthetically relate to this. It's incredibly beautiful, tight grain, warm tones and colors that you just don't find in new wood. This is an example of our select grade heart pine. In this grade, you will have knots, nail holes, and some mineral staining. Over here, we have our clear heart pine. Customers, if they're looking for a more formal look, they'll say, I'd like the material without knots, nail holes, mineral staining. Chestnut is one of the most valued floors that we have. The chestnut tree at one time made up 25% of the forests on the eastern seaboard. After a blight hit it in the early 1900s, the trees were decimated. The only way to have a chestnut floor or millwork is through the salvage process.
In many instances, the rougher, more distressed the condition of the wood, the better.
We surfaced one side, but left the live edge on the outer edge. Customers love to have this as a countertop or bar top or a mantle. It shows the original shape of the tree. This is what they call virgin growth lumber.
Virgin growth lumber comes from trees that were here when European settlers first came to America. Shortly after the Pilgrims landed, they would use that virgin lumber to establish America's earliest lumber yards. 8,000 years ago, nearly 15 billion acres of forest covered the earth. Today, forests cover only about 8.5 billion acres. The Lumberyard will return on Modern Marvels, here on the History Channel.